Naissance is about experience before it is about understanding. As the description in the Steam store says, it is a philosophical trip and an artistic experience, in a primitive, mysterious structure. The game mainly consists to explore and feel the deep and strong ambience of this atemporal world. In other words, Naissance is very ambiguous. What counts as an artistic experience, and what is a philosophical trip? On top of that, it is atemporal, unaffected by time, perhaps eternal. A concept we can think about, but not understand. So how do you go about analyzing a game that you cannot understand, at least not fully? You could try explaining what counts as an artistic experience, or try to define a philosophical trip. But I would rather go into the game itself. Experience is also a very ambiguous term, so we can try analyzing that, as there are a few interesting concepts at play that have a great influence on the experience of playing Naissance. Obviously, this video will spoil the entire game. If you haven't already, you can play it, it's free on Steam. Naissance is a game created by Limas 5, a studio comprised of one individual, Mavros Cedeño. In the bio on his website, he states that he is passionate about games and creation, and that he implements music, art and philosophy into his works to communicate new kinds of emotions. In a bit I'll discuss in how far he succeeded in this with Naissance. Naissance was released in 2014 and became free somewhere during its lifespan. It is a first-person exploration game with puzzle and platforming elements here and there, but mainly it is about the atmosphere. Aside from the chapter titles, there is no overt narrative. Through the lack of an overt narrative and the focus being on exploration, Naissance plays like a walking simulator. There is the exception of the breathing mechanic, a mini rhythm game to extend your run, which is used in a few of the platform puzzles. Other than that, you are dropped in a mysterious world where you need to find your way to the end, which you simply do by walking around until you seem to be making progress. So what makes Naissance worth playing? It definitely is not like most games. Some fundamental game elements are lacking. Without an overt narrative, you would expect more of the platforming and vice versa. But Naissance is more a work of art, or at least a creative interpretation of music, atmosphere and video games, than that it is a game. As was stated in Cedeño's bio, it is about a new kind of emotion. To evoke this new kind of emotion, a few concepts are at play. Of these concepts, one stands out: deep listening, an idea from Oliveros. Besides this, the general atmosphere of the architecture plays a significant role as well. Together, they create the experience that sets Naissance apart from other games. You don't play Naissance as a relaxing video game, or for any competitive element, two main reasons people play video games. But this channel would not exist if games did not offer more than mere entertainment, so Naissance definitely deserves a spot. The game starts with an introduction of what you later learn to be the host. After a short chase scene, you are dropped into a hole of a mysterious structure with the even more mysterious heading, Lucius Last. You get a short tutorial and are left to explore on your own. The exploration is colored by the music, the atmosphere and the sounds every object makes. You soon learn that the structure doesn't make sense. There are rooms that lead to nowhere, infinite staircases and passages that only open when you approach them. Then there is an inexplicable strip cup and a walkway above a skyline, only to connect into a very strange ventilation system. You continually move from claustrophobic corridors to vertigo-inducing heights. Only at the very end do you see the host again, a worm-like creature that literally eats away the structure. Upon successfully escaping it, you are greeted with a title card that says, "The Beginning." But this is, obviously, the end. The game was unaffected by time, after all. This in itself is already quite an experience, and a senseless one at that. But it is made more interesting by the concept of deep listening. As stated before, deep listening is an idea from Oliveros. It is the practice of deeply listening to every sound in your environment. As opposed to simply hearing, which often filters out unnecessary sounds, listening is actively paying attention to every single sound that you can hear. Deep listening then means to be fully aware of all the sounds in your environment. In case you're interested, Oliveros has written about it. Deep listening, a composer's sound practice, is a good place to start. In this light, the breathing mechanic not only adds an element of challenge, but also becomes a central part of the experience. It becomes a sound in the environment, together with the hastened footsteps and their echo. On top of the environmental sounds, the music itself is also an interesting listening experience. It is at times very peaceful, but there always seems to be an element of stress in there. During a calm puzzle, the music sometimes picks up speed or plays a frantic melody, which keeps you on your toes. With the deep listening comes the architecture. They seem to work in tandem. The architecture is daunting and makes no sense. As everything is in grayscale, it also seems very melancholic. And this is contrasted by the oftentimes peaceful music, although it does have uncanny elements in it. Together with listening to every sound and trying to navigate this mysterious building, you eventually end up finding the way forward. Sometimes you struggle, sometimes you get hopelessly lost, but eventually you'll get there. At times it feels like a daunting task, but with each step you get closer to the end, and every step is an experience in itself. In total, this makes NaissanceE almost a meditative experience. With this explanation, I did end up talking about the artistic experience. The listening, the odd architecture, and the general melancholic mood do all add up to an emotion. Perhaps even a new one. For me, this emotion was one of desperation, trying to understand what is going on but failing to do so. This in turn seems to be the philosophical trip they mentioned. Philosophy literally means desire for wisdom. So desperately trying to understand an adventure that comes awfully close to a trip would count as philosophical. Despite my attempt at understanding, NaissanceE remains a mystery for me. When starting the script for this video, I tried to explain the atemporality of the world, but that is, as of yet, an impossible task. Perhaps NaissanceE echoes the idea that thought happens in terms of time, and therefore cannot think about time. You can try to wrap your head around it, but you will fail to do so. It is more about the experience than it is about understanding. Perhaps that is the wisdom we can glean from NaissanceE. Thank you for watching.